You guys, someone has to do the dirty work, and it's gonna be me. So this is episode 98 covering the WNBA CBA, because we did just get another article about the situation, and there was a little bit of new information that I wanted.
Will there even be a WNBA season? That question used to sound dramatic. Now it's procedural. The deadline has passed. We're officially in what labor experts call status quo territory, the most dangerous phase of any collective bargaining dispute. And what makes this moment alarming isn't loud confrontation, it's silence. Not strategic silence. Not calm before the storm silence. This is the kind of silence that suggests paralysis. Both sides have stopped talking publicly. No press conferences, no updates, no reassurances, and in a league already fighting for stability, that quiet feels heavy. But here's what separates this situation from every other labor dispute fans have seen before. The players already acted. The players submitted their full proposal more than a month ago. Not a concept, not a teaser, a complete proposal. And the league's response? Nothing. No counteroffer. No rejection. No acknowledgement. No, we're reviewing it. Absolutely nothing. That absence of response changes everything. In negotiations, silence is rarely neutral. It's a message. And this one is loud, because when one side puts a proposal on the table and the other side refuses to engage, it signals that the conversation isn't stalled, it's dismissed. This isn't about delays or legal review. A month is an eternity in labor talks. By now, even a symbolic response would normally exist. Instead, the league has chosen non-engagement. And that choice reframes the entire conflict. It tells players that their concerns aren't just unresolved, they're unworthy of formal discussion. It tells fans that there is no urgency behind the scenes. And it tells everyone watching that this negotiation may already be broken. What makes this especially troubling is the timing. The WNBA isn't negotiating from a position of excess goodwill. It's negotiating during its most visible era ever, while public attention is high and expectations are even higher. Walking into silence now risks undoing years of momentum. This isn't brinkmanship. This is indifference disguised as patience. And once a league crosses that line, once it stops responding altogether, the question stops being how far apart are they and becomes, does either side believe a season is guaranteed at all?
The proposal didn't warrant a response. Since it wasn't that different from the past ones, the union was, I cannot read today. The union has submitted. And instead, sources told ESPN it's waiting for the players to submit what it would consider a more realistic proposal. So basically, the league is saying, without saying...
Here's the unfiltered reality. The league looked at the players' proposal and decided it wasn't worth responding to. That's not speculation. That's what multiple sources have told ESPN. And while some might frame that as tough negotiation tactics, the truth is far less subtle. The league is waiting not for compromise, but for surrender. Sources say the WNBA believes the players' proposal isn't realistic. Translation: they have no intention of meeting it halfway. They've drawn a hard-line step behind it and are daring the players to make the next move. At the center of this standoff is the revenue split. The players are asking for a 30% share of gross revenue. Gross. That word matters. It means before expenses, before accounting maneuvers, before creative definitions of profitability. It's a demand rooted in transparency and long-term equity. The league's response hasn't been spoken publicly, but it doesn't need to be. Their silence says everything. We're not doing that. By refusing to counter, the league has effectively frozen negotiations. They're signaling that unless the players drastically lower their expectations, there will be no conversation at all. That's not bargaining. That's a challenge. And challenges carry risk, because when one side believes it has leverage, it often underestimates the cost of being wrong. The league appears confident that players will blink first, that financial pressure, career uncertainty, and fear of losing a season will force concessions. But here's the problem. Players are already preparing for that outcome. This isn't a rookie group unfamiliar with labor battles. Many of these players have spent years playing overseas, navigating unstable contracts, and surviving without guarantees. The assumption that they'll fold quietly may be outdated. By refusing to engage, the league has turned a negotiation into a test of endurance. And endurance cuts both ways. If no one moves, there is no middle ground defined. Just a widening gap and a ticking clock.
we're not hearing specifically like, we're not even entertaining the players' proposal, but that's kind of what they're saying here. So the players made a proposal, and I'm going to take you guys back. The last proposal that the WNBPA made to the WNBA, the WNBA was kind of like, if we do what you guys are asking, if we give you this money, if we give you this revenue split, we could lose $700 million. Now the WNBPA came back and they were like, well, that's not true. Open the books. Tell us how much you're actually making, because we don't think that it's going to.
Housing has become one of the loudest sticking points. And frankly, if the season collapses over housing, it would be an embarrassment. The league stance is simple. With salaries rising to proposed levels, players can afford their own housing. The players disagree, especially for short-term contracts, emergency signings, trades, and mid-season movement. Those concerns are legitimate. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Housing isn't the real issue. Every professional league deals with housing logistics. None of them cancel seasons over it. If the sides were aligned on revenue, housing would be resolved in hours, not months. The reason it feels existential is because everything else is unresolved. When you can't agree on how much players are worth, every detail becomes a battlefield. Housing becomes symbolic. It becomes leverage. It becomes proof of respect or lack of it. That's how you know how far apart these sides really are. Because if they were close, this wouldn't matter. And until they bridge the core divide, nothing else will move.
Negotiation is, one player told ESPN. I'm going to push back on this just a little bit, because I do think that both sides need to find a compromise, obviously. However, if we look at what their deal was in 2020 and we look at the current deal on the table from the league's side, max salary players would make over $1 million. Minimum salary is now going to be higher than the maximum salary was in the last CBA deal. Like, there is actually so much that the W is providing, and they're also offering a 70% net revenue split. And so to say that there wasn't compromise.
What makes this situation even more volatile is how unevenly this story is being told. The players are visible. They're on social media. They're doing interviews. They're staging protests, placing rat props outside NBA stores to symbolize what they believe is a bad faith offer. They're calling the league's proposal lipstick on a pig, openly and repeatedly. The league, meanwhile, is invisible. No official statements. No press conferences, no named executives taking questions. Instead, the league is speaking through leaks, carefully placed information fed to trusted reporters with access to league sources. That difference in approach matters. When one side speaks publicly and the other hides behind anonymous sourcing, it creates distrust by default. And distrust is already the defining feature of this negotiation. From those leaks, one number keeps resurfacing: $700 million. That's the figure the league allegedly claims it could lose if it meets the players' demands. $700 million. The players immediately called it false. They demanded transparency. Open the books. Show the real financials. The league refused. That refusal may be the most damaging move of all. Because once transparency is denied, every number becomes suspect. Every claim becomes questionable. And every compromise becomes harder to justify. Now both sides believe the other is lying. And when trust collapses, logic follows it out the door. This is no longer a disagreement over percentages. It's a credibility crisis. And with no official dialogue, no shared data, and no neutral verification, the stalemate hardens. The clock doesn't care who's right. It only cares who moves.
The insistence that the league's proposals are so far from adequate as to be insulting. That's not a usual tact for a union to take in such disputes, but sources outside the WNBPA have told ESPN that the union might benefit by starting to talk more optimistically about the wins it appears to have even before the deal is done. And I actually appreciate the fact that ESPN is calling this out, because it's one of those things, like, I don't know, the WNBA and its coverage is...
Let's strip away the noise and talk about what's actually on the table. The league's current offer would push maximum salaries beyond $1 million. The proposed minimum salary would exceed what used to be the maximum just a few years ago. That's not marginal progress, it's a structural leap. They're also offering players 70% of net revenue. And this is where confusion sets in. Net revenue sounds generous until you understand what it means. Net revenue comes after expenses. Gross revenue comes before. The players want gross. The league is offering net. That distinction is everything. Expenses can be defined, expanded, and reallocated. Gross revenue is fixed. That's why players want it. It eliminates ambiguity. But the WNBA's ownership structure complicates everything. The league owns 40% of itself. The NBA owns another 40%. Outside investors own 16%. This isn't a single-entity negotiation like the NBA. Every dollar conceded affects multiple stakeholders, including the NBA, which has its own financial priorities and obligations. So when people ask why this is so difficult, this is why. The WNBA isn't just negotiating with players. It's negotiating with itself, its investors, and its parent league. That complexity doesn't excuse gridlock, but it explains it.